Have you ever been surrounded by people, yet still felt completely alone, or spent days without really talking to anyone, and noticed your mind slowly becoming heavier, foggier, and quieter? What most people don't realize is that social isolation doesn't just affect your mood or emotions, it actually changes the way your brain functions. When you feel disconnected, ignored, or unseen for long periods of time, your brain begins to shift into a kind of survival mode, quietly rewiring itself in ways that can make you feel anxious, unmotivated, emotionally numb, or even hopeless. This isn't weakness, and it isn't something wrong with you, it's biology. Humans are wired for connection, and when that connection disappears, the brain treats it as a serious threat. That's why loneliness can physically hurt, why overthinking becomes louder, and why simple tasks start to feel exhausting. In today's world, this is happening to more people than ever: students, remote workers, stay-at-home individuals, and even those constantly online yet deeply disconnected. In this video, we're going to break down exactly what social isolation does to your brain, why it affects your thoughts, emotions, and behavior so deeply, and most importantly, how you can undo the damage and help your brain heal again. By the end of this video, you'll understand that you are not broken, you are not weak, and you are definitely not alone, and that recovery is not only possible, but already built into your brain. Chapter 1. Understanding social isolation. Social isolation is not just about being physically alone. It is about feeling disconnected, unseen, or emotionally distant from others, even when people are around you. You can live with family, attend school, or scroll through social media all day and still feel deeply isolated. This happens when meaningful human connection is missing. Your brain does not measure connection by likes, messages, or crowds. It measures it by trust, eye contact, shared emotion, and real interaction. Over time, when these things are absent, the brain begins to register isolation as a problem that needs to be solved. This is why loneliness often creeps in quietly. At first, it feels like boredom. Then it turns into emotional heaviness. Eventually, it can feel like numbness or mental exhaustion. Many people blame themselves for this feeling, thinking they are antisocial or broken. But social isolation is often a result of lifestyle changes, stress, trauma, or prolonged emotional pressure. Understanding this is important, because once you realize isolation is a condition, not a character flaw, you can begin to address it without shame. Chapter 2. How the brain is wired for connection. The human brain evolved to survive in groups. For thousands of years, connection meant safety, food, protection, and survival. Because of this, the brain developed systems that reward social interaction with pleasure and emotional stability. When you talk, laugh, or feel understood by someone, your brain releases chemicals like dopamine and serotonin, which regulate mood, motivation, and focus. These chemicals are not luxuries, they are necessities. When social interaction disappears, the brain does not simply stay neutral. Instead, it interprets the lack of connection as a danger signal. It begins asking, why am I alone? And am I at risk? This is why loneliness feels uncomfortable rather than peaceful. The brain was never designed for prolonged isolation. Even introverted people need connection to stay mentally balanced. When connection is removed, the brain shifts away from growth and creativity and moves toward protection and survival. This shift changes how you think, feel, and respond to the world, often without you even realizing it. Chapter 3. Stress, cortisol, and survival mode. One of the first things social isolation does to the brain is increase stress hormones, especially cortisol. Cortisol is useful in short bursts. It helps you react to danger, but when it stays high for long periods, it becomes harmful. Social isolation keeps cortisol elevated because the brain believes you are unsafe without a group. As cortisol rises, the brain prioritizes survival over clarity. This is why isolated people often feel tense, restless, or mentally tired even when they are not doing much. Over time, high cortisol shrinks areas of the brain involved in memory and emotional regulation. It also disrupts sleep, making it harder to rest and recover. This creates a cycle where poor sleep increases stress, and stress deepens isolation. The brain becomes stuck in a loop, constantly alert, constantly tired. This is not a personal failure, it is a biological response to prolonged disconnection. Recognizing this helps explain why loneliness feels physically draining, not just emotionally painful. Chapter 4. Emotional changes and overthinking. Social isolation deeply affects emotional regulation. When you are connected to others, emotions are shared, processed, and released naturally. But in isolation, emotions have nowhere to go. They begin to build up inside the mind. This often leads to overthinking, negative self-talk, and emotional sensitivity. The brain's fear center, known as the amygdala, becomes more active during isolation. This makes small problems feel bigger and neutral situations feel threatening. You may start replaying conversations, doubting yourself, or assuming the worst about how others see you. At the same time, the brain reduces activity in areas responsible for rational thinking and emotional balance. This combination creates anxiety, self-doubt, and emotional exhaustion. Many people describe feeling stuck in their head. This happens because the brain is missing external emotional feedback. Human connection helps regulate emotions, and without it, the mind turns inward in unhealthy ways. Chapter 5: Motivation, Focus, and Mental Fog. Isolation also affects motivation and cognitive performance. When social interaction is limited, dopamine levels drop. Dopamine is the chemical responsible for drive, curiosity, and reward. Without it, even simple tasks feel heavy. You may struggle to concentrate, procrastinate more, or feel mentally foggy. The brain begins conserving energy because it believes resources are limited. This is why isolated people often lose interest in hobbies, goals, or learning. It is not laziness, it is neurological withdrawal. Over time, this lack of stimulation weakens neural connections involved in focus and memory. The brain becomes underused, much like a muscle that is no longer exercised. This can make people feel slow, dull, or disconnected from themselves. Understanding this helps remove guilt and replace it with awareness. Motivation does not disappear randomly, it fades when the brain is deprived of connection and stimulation. Chapter 6: Long-term effects of prolonged isolation. When social isolation continues for months or years, the effects become more deeply ingrained. The brain adapts to loneliness by lowering expectations for connection. This can lead to emotional numbness, withdrawal, and difficulty trusting others. Some people stop reaching out because their brain has learned that connection feels risky or disappointing. Over time, isolation can reshape personality traits, making people quieter, more guarded, or emotionally distant. The brain becomes efficient at being alone, but inefficient at reconnecting. This is why long-term isolation can feel permanent, even when opportunities for connection return. However, it is important to understand that these changes are adaptations, not damage beyond repair. The brain is doing what it thinks is necessary to survive. With the right conditions, these adaptations can be reversed. Chapter 7: How the brain heals through reconnection. The brain has a powerful ability called neuroplasticity, which means it can rewire itself through experience. This is how healing begins. Even small moments of connection, short conversations, shared laughter, or feeling understood send signals of safety back to the brain. Dopamine and serotonin begin to rise again. Stress hormones decrease. Neural pathways related to trust and emotional balance slowly reactivate. Reconnection does not require instant friendships or deep relationships. The brain responds to consistency, not intensity. Regular human interaction, even in small doses, reminds the brain that it is no longer alone. Over time, motivation returns, focus improves, and emotional stability increases. The brain relearns how to feel safe with others. Healing is gradual, but it is real. Chapter 8: Rebuilding Connection and Moving Forward. Undoing the effects of social isolation starts with compassion. Blaming yourself only reinforces stress. Instead, acknowledge that your brain adapted to difficult circumstances. Begin with small, manageable steps. Brief conversations, shared activities, or structured social environments. Physical movements, sunlight, and routine also support brain recovery. Journaling and speaking your thoughts out loud help externalize emotions again. Most importantly, remember that reconnection is a skill that can be rebuilt. The brain responds to patience and repetition. You are not behind, broken, or unworthy of connection. Your brain is simply waiting for safety signals. And with time, effort, and understanding, it will respond. If you take one thing away from this video, let it be this: social isolation did not break you. Your brain adapted to protect you in a situation where connection was missing. And that adaptation, however painful, was never meant to be permanent. The fog, the emotional heaviness, the lack of motivation, and the constant overthinking are not signs of weakness. They are signals from a brain that has been in survival mode for too long. And the most important part is this: your brain is not stuck this way. With small, consistent steps toward connection, safety, and stimulation, it can begin to heal. You do not need to suddenly become social or force yourself into uncomfortable situations. Healing happens gradually, through moments of presence, routine, movement, and honest human interaction. If you are watching this and feeling seen, know that you are not alone in this experience, even if it feels that way right now. Change does not start with pressure, it starts with understanding. If this video helped you make sense of what you're feeling, take that as your first step forward. And if you're ready, stay here, subscribe, and continue learning how your mind works, because understanding your brain is one of the most powerful ways to take your life back.